Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Maher. I'm the director of the Barnum Museum here in beautiful downtown Bridgeport, Connecticut. And thank you. Thank you for joining us for another one of our instructive entertainment programs. We're doing something a little special today. For years and decades, the city, the community of Bridgeport has celebrated its namesake, P.T. Barnum, who was responsible for so much of the creation of the city, with a parade every year, and my goodness, it was just innumerable events that would take place every single year, called the Barnum Festival. And the Barnum Museum and the festival operate on two different, paths, but we're certainly parallel paths because we both celebrate P.T. Barnum and his legacy and his contributions to certainly the city's history, but certainly on an American platform. Now, before I go on and tell you the whole story, what we thought would be a terrific thing to do is really invite who I consider the keeper of the Barnum Festival history, Charlie Carroll. So before we bring Charlie on, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe below. We love having more subscribers to our channel. It gives us an opportunity to really share so many stories regarding Barnum and his influences here in Connecticut and beyond. But also, if you're a return guest to the channel, thank you so much for coming back again and joining us. So with that, I do want to introduce Charlie Carroll. And Charlie, you're here representing the Carroll family, who have huge history in Bridgeport as well. We've been friends, oh my goodness, I came to the Barnum Museum in 1998, and I think we met shortly after that. So we've been, comrades in arms many times throughout all of these events and programs that we do. And I just thought I'd bring you here to really kind of talk about the Barnum Festival history, and I'm going to let you take it from there because it goes back to the mid-19th century, It's not the mid-19th century. I'm sorry, the mid-20th century. Although it feels like the mid-19th century. So a lot of days. So if you want to just tell everybody a little bit about the festival, and then we can have a conversation from there because we've got some great images we're going to share as you're talking too.
And then thank you for having me here today. The Barnum Festival was born, so to speak, in 1948. It was a meeting after the Second World War. Bridgeport was known as the arsenal of democracy. And after the war had ended and whatnot, some of the business people, led by a guy named Herman Steinkraus, who was then the president of the Bridgeport Brass Company, come up with this idea how to have some community spirit and make everybody in the community feel better, and kind of transitioned out of the war years. And he got a group of business people together, and they met and they came up with this idea of using P.T. Barnum, of course, who was Bridgeport's most famous citizen and its mayor at one time. And he had done so many things in the community. I mean, from, these better than I, from the Bridgeport Hospital to the water company to the Bridgeport Port Jefferson Steamboat Company. They're all P.T. Barnum. So they would use Barnum, and Herman Steinkraus convinced his friend Bill Hope to be, at that time they referred to it as the general chairman, but soon thereafter turned it into the Ringmaster. And Bill Hope was the first Ringmaster, and the first festival was performed in 1949. It has gone on every year since. This would be the 74th year. We'll talk about that little blip of COVID that got in the way and kept us from doing a complete list of things. But each year the festival would pick a new ringmaster. Each ringmaster would bring with himself new enthusiasm. Not sometimes, but always a new set of volunteers with them to augment the volunteers that the festival had. Ringmasters came from industry. They came from the legal field. They came from government. They came from the building trades. They came from medical fields. They came from manufacturing. banking. They came from every walk of life, and that was what got the entire community involved, as they came from everywhere. And what they brought with them was volunteers, and volunteers have been the lifeblood of Barnum Festival since the beginning. There are a couple of volunteers that I should mention. Nick Piccarelli and Don Palazzo and Joan Brzezinski have been there for about 60 years. I know Nick joined in 1962 during the when I think of the Ringmaster's name. Downs,
You know
Nelson
what?
Downs.
Nelson Downs, yeah, right.
Nelson Downs came in. Nelson was actually the 63 Ringmaster, but Nick was involved in 62 because Nelson was the chairman of Parade of Champions. And it's a whole series of community events, cultural events. Different events will happen in different years as each Ringmaster puts his own little fingerprint, so to speak, on it. They'll bring something that they like, and some of them may sustain and some of them may not. But the real core events to the Barnum Festival have been here since the beginning.
For nearly half a century, thousands of volunteers have worked diligently to create an annual, not-to-be-forgotten experience of fun, color, music, and pageantry that is the Barnum Festival. It honors the magic of Phineas T. Barnum. I'm Paul Delfino, this year's Ringmaster, and I'd like to personally invite you, your families, your friends, and your neighbors to one of the greatest festivals ever. Join us for the fun.
Yeah, and and there are a lot of them. We were just talking about that. The wonderful thing about the festival, as I fumble through here, because we had done the exhibition and I really did a deep dive on a lot of core programs. So there are things like which people wouldn't necessarily expect, but the Jenny Lind competition, and I chaired that for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Which was fascinating. There would be a competition of very serious coloratura sopranos from all over the United States, and one would be selected.
Yeah, one would be selected to be the Jenny Lind. Of course, Jenny Lind was one of the people in Barnum's show that he had gone to Europe to get, and each year Sweden would be in cooperation with the Barnum Festival and the Norden Club in Bridgeport and whatnot. And Jenny Lind from Sweden would come, and we'd have a concert here. You very well, and it would be the American Jenny Lind and the Swedish Jenny Lind, and it was a great show. It was a wonderful cultural event.
For me, it was an honor to be a part of it, because we really kept up with a lot of the Jenny Linds as time marched forward, including the winners from Sweden. And I'll never forget your brother Frank's Jenny Lind concert. It was at the Bijou Theater here in downtown Bridgeport, and it was beyond sold out. It was standing room only. It was crazy. You were there, Charlie.
Yeah.
I definitely know you were there, but we were pulling folding chairs out from the back to have seats for the amount of guests. And it was amazing. It was amazing. It kind of reminded me of what probably those early days in the 1940s were like, but that was Frank. Everybody was just like, he was, Frank Carroll, of course, was the ringmaster in 2012. What it was 12?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That was an exciting event.
Yeah, it was. Frank is a bit of the Pied Piper. He had everybody following along, but Frank was one of those ringmasters who brought that energy to the festival and brought new people to the festival. The festival has a history with ringmasters of families. The Dario family has had 3 ringmasters. The Carroll family, myself, and my 2 brothers were there. The Santa family has had Uncle George and his nephew Tom, and the Julian family has had Andrew and his son Jason. So it's a history of
legacy.
Yeah, it is. It is legacy, and people. And each one of those that followed in the family, at least in our case, it was because of, you know, somebody else in the family that was involved for years that got us involved. I mean, I go back to the years of the Midway, which was a fundraiser for the Barnum Festival held in Seaside Park. And I can remember it'd be the late 50s, probably, maybe early 60s. My parents would be involved in running a booth down there that was sponsored, and it raised money for the boys clubs. We were all boys club and girls club kids, my sisters and brothers and I. And so I go back that far with it. And then in 1988, well, even before that, back in 1980, my brother Jimmy was the chairman of the Road Show when he was involved with the Lions Club. And then in 1988, our family was honored. My late brother Bill became the ringmaster, and that kind of really got, that kind of bit me then. I got involved then, and I've been ever since. Stayed involved in it, and so it's
you're inextricable to it. There's no thinking of the festival without thinking of you and the Carroll family at the heart and the center of everything that goes on. Even we did radio once, you and I doing a radio, and your phone, because we had cell phones, was not. It was radio, and it started ringing while we were talking to. Was it? John, I can't remember who it was on ICC, and it kept being John Fabrizi before he was the mayor. And you were like, it was so funny. But it was always about talking about the festival and, you know, what was happening next and how we're pulling it together and the logistics. I don't think people realize, I know this is sort of shifting, but I don't think people realize the incredible logistics that go into all of these programs. You know, the parade, the policing and the fire and the zoning and, you know, and the city involvement. And, you know, if you want to talk about that, and going back to Nick Piccarelli, had it all in his head.
Yeah, all the permitting process. Of course, the city of Bridgeport has been a great supporter of the festival, and that's what makes it happen. And it's no different today. Mayor Ganem and his administration have been very supportive of the Barnum Festival, as have been previous mayors. You mentioned Mayor John Fabrizi. John was a Barnum Festival volunteer long before he was the mayor of Bridgeport, so he had done that. And volunteers, you know, kind of for years just stayed involved. As we mentioned, some people have been there 60 years. 2 ringmasters have been the volunteer of the year, and went on to become ringmaster. That would be Bill Murphy, who was the volunteer of the year in 1986 and became the 92 ringmaster. And myself, I was the volunteer of the year in 92 and became the ringmaster in 99. But there is a lot to go on it. People don't understand it. People are just not aware of it. They think a parade is, you just put the parade on. They don't realize you pay a lot of those corps and those people to be in that parade to do that. None of this happens without the volunteers, but most importantly, the corporate community. I mean, from the banks to insurance companies to utilities, to everybody has supported this over the years. Unfortunately, a lot has changed over the years too. You know, it's not the local Bridgeport Hydraulic Company anymore. It's not the United Illuminating Company. I mean, there was back in those days, AFCO Lycoming, Sikorsky Aircraft, the United Illuminating Company, the Bridgeport Gas Company. These companies would have their employees have teams together and build floats for the parade of who could outdo who. I mean, they were magnificent. There's so many pictures of them around. But that's what drove it. But we're fortunate today that we still have some of those people. That's People's United Bank, which is now part of M&T Bank. I mean, they're still a big supporter. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, local Union 488, they signed on a while back when my brother Frank was there and whatnot, and they've continued to be big supporters of ours. But
and the
still,
museum too,
and there's still so many other people, some law firms and local fuel companies, and every year we find somebody new. Some development companies, the people at Steel Point Development have been good to the festival and whatnot. So
Bravo to all of them. If
Yeah.
anybody from those places, bravo to all of them. It's a real community giving, and
They make it
certainly
happen.
goes a long way. Yeah, they really do. And hats off to all the contributions and the people that understand how important it is, to keep this, the spirit of the Barnum Festival going. Rising, keeping people's spirits up. And certainly through modern times. I mean, it all started, with a shift out of World War I into World War II. People in the community dynamic was changing. Fast forward through, decades of challenges. And the most recent one that you're facing now is COVID.
Yeah.
Right? So Frank
Generini, who was the ringmaster chosen for the 2020 festival. Unfortunately, we got to do like one event, and then in 2021 we did the fireworks. We tried to do a couple things to keep the festival going. So Frank is still there, and he'll be the ringmaster for 2022. But it's changed. It hurt us in the sense that we couldn't get into the nursing homes anymore for a while, and still can't. And we did a road show. I mean, a road show would put 50 people on a bus, kids of all ages and adults. Entertainment would go, and we'd do 20 nursing homes in 3 days. I mean, it's a grueling thing, but it's the most rewarding if you talk to any ringmaster.
And I'm glad you brought the road show up, because I was going to bring it up. It's the event that very few people know about, and it's probably one of the most impactful events that the festival does every year, because you're bringing the festival to all of these nursing homes where people can't get out and enjoy. And for so many people who are residents of, these places, they probably have the festival in their memories, right?
Oh, many times. You go to these different places, and that people will tell you what it was like in the 1950s and the 1960s. Yes.
Yeah. And, and it's a lot of work. There are routines, there are acts that you all have to, like the royal family, who we'll talk about, and the ringmaster, have little routines and gigs that you have to rehearse to take these things on the road. So it's a lot of work. And it's the thing that very few people realize happens every year. It's like the give back.
There are certain things in the festival that I would say the general public doesn't see some days, the road show being one of them. And, it takes a lot of work, but the volunteers and the people that put it together and whatnot. I mean, I can remember when I was the ringmaster, the first night of rehearsal for the road show, when I walked in, the woman who was running it at that time handed me the music sheet and said, "This is what you sing." And I said to her, "I don't sing." She said, "You do now. Get up there." And as they say, you do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But that is, the road show brings joy to the shut-ins and reminds people of what it was. And that's really the whole idea of the festival, is to try to include everybody, from every age group. And that's what we've tried to keep going. Bridgeport has changed over the years, and we have to change with it. We have to remake ourselves in some ways, and in a lot of cases, we have to reintroduce ourselves, of who we are and why we're here. I mean, we have to actually teach the history, because a lot of the people that now reside in our city, they weren't here for that. They don't know about it, but hopefully they'll continue to be supportive of it.
Right. But you're absolutely right. I mean, any business, if you want to look at the festival really as a business, I mean, it's a lot of logistics that you do, a lot of data you have to capture. So you always have to respond to what the event is at any moment. Certainly the museum does as well, so you have to be relevant to the people you're serving, in that regard.
Exactly.
But one of the other programs I'd love for you to talk about, which I always think is wonderful, and the museum's partnered with it, is the wingding that would take place at the Beardsley Zoo. In recent years, I don't know if it started there when the wingding, but the idea was to create something for really the kids in the community to have their own little magnificent parade.
It was billed as the parade for kids by kids, and it was led by our two little characters that played Tom Thumb and Lavinia Warren. Because of COVID too, it has affected the wingding and family, and people are still hesitant to get into bigger groups and do things. So we're going to change it a little bit this year. We're going to do a Barnum Festival day at the zoo. We're going to give the free carousel rides, and we're going to help celebrate the 100th anniversary of our zoo. which has been a partner with the festival, letting us come up there and do the wingding. We've done other things up there. So we're going to do that. We're going to add a few more events in for that day. And so that'll kind of be our wingding, but for kids this year.
So that's fantastic. That's another thing that I think folks don't necessarily realize about Bridgeport as well. All of the cultural attractions and events are really a great unified force in this city. So just the fact that you partner with the zoo, we partner with the zoo, we do things with the festival, city, like I mentioned, the Bijou Theater, the Cabaret Theater, everybody's really working together to advance Bridgeport's, which one of your ringmasters coined it, a fundraising event? Because, of all the nonprofits, it's the fundraising. Was it Ken Maloney? Well,
actually, I think it was Mickey Herbert.
Was it Mickey?
I think it was during his. It might have been during his time, but I do remember it's a fundraising event.
And when this goes live, somebody's going to let us know in the comments.
Who really said it? Yeah.
So
and I'll get
if you remember, our apologies.
Don't you remember it was me?
But it was.
I don't know.
It might have been Bob Lasker. Well, it was just terrific, and it would even be. It's a fundraising event, and that was always the heart and soul of the Barnum Festival.
And that's each ringmaster. I mean, we've gotten to kind of get a theme for theirs. I mean, I'll remember mine. Mine was clearly was the year of the volunteer, and it was because I was a volunteer, and I was so appreciative of all the volunteers that I had worked with over the years, and when I got the honor of being a ringmaster, who supported me. So mine was the year to volunteer. But there's been community spirit. Everyone counts. There's all kinds of different ones that came into be.
So we're talking a little bit about these ringmasters. So maybe we should put this in context for guests. So the idea of the ringmaster and the royal family. It's the thread that carries through really from the beginning. You always have your figurehead who would really be the galvanizer of all the programs, events, and rally, the troops, so to speak, to put these events on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the ringmasters, and let's not forget Betty Freem, because I forgot to jot her name down, who is a dear friend to the museum as well. And then the kids, the royal family kids that were amazing. Whether they won or not, we would host a lot of the competitions or the events at the museum.
Yes.
Those are always my most fun days here because they were just great kids. So
and you taught them some of the history of what they were. Tom Thumb and Levin Warren, P.T. Barnum, so that it was also a learning experience for. Yeah, the ringmasters, as I mentioned over the year, come from all walks of life. Betty Freem will always stand out. First of all, she was our only female ringmaster to date. And Betty, of course, was the owner and publisher of the Bridgeport Post. And Betty was just, she was a wonderful philanthropist, as anybody in the Bridgeport community knows. Her name is on, or she's responsible for so many good things that have happened in that community and still lives to now, after Betty has passed. But Betty was the savior for the Barnum Festival back in the days, and she continued to support it through the rest of her life. She was always most interested in the kids and what we were doing to bring more people and include more people into the festival. That was done too, to say the ringmaster, he gets chosen by a committee, and again, they've come from all walks of life. And then we go to the royal family, which has been going on for back to about the beginning. I know the first king in 1951 was the late Fred Gardner, and we go to the high schools, and we have picked. There's a competition. Each high school will send a male student, a female student, and they had to be in the upper 20% of their class, have community involvement, whatnot, and then they'd go through an interview process, and all the local high schools and all the surrounding communities would send them, and we'd pick a king and a queen and a prince and a princess. And some years we picked 2 princes and 2 princesses. As ringmasters would want to do. Well, that would be my brother Frank that started that. Let's have 2 of each, which was a good idea. And we would do that. And then we would have and they would reign, so to speak, over the festival for that year. And that brought the enthusiasm of that generation. And then we had the children in the 3rd and 4th grade who would go through the same type of thing, the same type of competition. There'd be more of them because they'd come from every grammar school. And each one would send a male and a female student. And they would write an essay and then tell us about P.T. Barnum or Tom Thumb, whatever they were asked to do that year. And they would come to a competition. And then, as you know, they would go tour the museum and learn some history about that. And then we'd pick a Tom Thumb and Lavinia, and together with the Ringmaster, became the royal family. And for each year, that was the royal family for that year. But as I always tell the kids, you know, when they're leaving, if you were the king of the 1990 Barnum Festival, you'll always be the king of the 1999 Barnum Festival because that was your year. So that includes more families coming into it, and gets us around the communities involved in it. So that's how we built it. There's other things that go on in the communities up there, like now you have Trumbull Day and Stratford Day and Fairfield Day. Those were all born out of the Barnum Festival.
Yeah, I was going to mention those. Yeah,
they were all Barnum Festival days at one time. They now have taken on a life of their own in their own communities, but those communities are still supportive of the Barnum Festival.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I was going to mention those because, you know, I live in Trumbull, and it's always Trumbull Day is always a big deal. And usually, and I don't know if it's happened in nothing's happened in recent years, but the royal family and the Ringmaster would come, you know, at some point on, you know, Trumbull Day to just sort of, you know, put the bow on the cake of the event, you know, and the first select people would come, and it's like another year's gone by. But a wonderful thing too about the royal family, from what I understand, quite a number of them, they stay together. Yeah, they keep in communication. There's a special, as you mentioned, there's a special bond with that group of kids who just sort of remain connected, you know, through time.
Yeah,
and that's
they do, and that's a good thing. You know, it's
wonderful.
Just as a side note, my wife and I were last summer up in Newtown at one of the farms getting ice cream, and the guy caught my attention. I said, well, I knew him. I said, and his daughter was the queen my year, and she was there with her children and whatnot. So
we kind
of relived the whole thing, and it was fun.
That's a special thing. That's a very special thing. And one thing that I always love too, there have been a couple of students, you know, royal family students, who went on to go to Tufts University. And for those that don't know, P.T. Barnum is a founder of Tufts University up in Massachusetts. He is still on the board of directors list for Tufts. You can find it on their website going back to 1852. So a few of those kids even went on to be jumbos at Tufts University. So that was always a point of pride. It's like, where are you going? I'm going to Tufts. So that was always a nice thing to see too, that legacy. You know, a fun thing too that I want to talk about in the festival or early years. And you know, we're very used to the parade and you know, and the Jenny Lind concert and the road show, everything happened. But there are people out there that probably remember the ballyhoo shows. Yeah, yes. The ballyhoos were a huge. So it's before, you know, blockbuster celebrity kind of fees that would be paid for appearances, but
exactly.
Yeah. But the ballyhoos.
You talk about that and the entertainment we had. Somebody had just mentioned me the other day. They said, you know, I was living in Seaside Village at the time, and I walked into the park to see Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet. But we had Bob Hope, Johnny Carson. You know, I mean, one of the last ones I remember was Doc Severinsen came in the 25th anniversary, and his group played. But there was all of the biggest stars, entertainers came in those days, and it started at the time that I remember. My earliest recollection of it is it would be over at Ray Vestas on the Ray Vestas field in Stratford, which is no longer there, but it's where the Cardinals and Burkettes played ball, and that's where the ballyhoo show would be held. But then the last one I remember was at Fairfield University. But it just became then you couldn't get that kind of talent anymore. You couldn't afford
No,
So,
no.
but that was a big part of the festival early on. But again, as we say, you know, it has to evolve, it has to change, it has to, you know, do it.
Yeah. But it's always a fun thing too, because even like colleague organizations, partnering organizations that do something Barnum related, it seems like you and I always get the phone call. So when the outdoor presentation of the Barnum Broadway play happened over in Fairfield, right?
Yeah.
Who was the ringmaster that year? It was like, probably it was the last year before
It's
COVID.
Marty Schwartz.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
It was,
Oh, right.
It was,
Right.
yeah, it was Christine
Brown.
Brown brought that idea to me, and we supported it, and it became a Barnum Festival production, so to speak. I mean, we funded it and got it to happen, and it was a great show. I mean, it was there for several days, and we had a lot of fun. But it was, you know, and they had all the actors that were in it and whatnot. But it's another one of those things, and it was free to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another one of those things that people don't cost a lot of money to put that production on. So thankful for our corporate sponsors and our volunteers that go out and work on our events. And some of our events will raise some money for us, you know, but most times everything the public attends, most of it is free.
Yeah, it really is an objective. Now, the one thing that we haven't really talked about yet is the Great Street Parade. You know,
Great Street Parade. Yeah, been going on for years, and but you know, the parade it is changing somewhat too. I mean, back in the days of the 1950s and 60s, I mean, I could name you 10 junior drum corps that were just in Bridgeport or in the Bridgeport area from Trumbull, and none of those exist anymore. Yeah. So when you and the senior drum corps, you know, we used to do a big drum corps show. At one time, the Barnum Festival did a complete Mummers on Parade. I mean, we had 7 or 8 Mummers groups do a show like we do the drum corps show. They performed at those days at Hedges Stadium at Harding High School. I can remember that show going on. But you know, like I said, so the parade, the festival took on years ago, got a warehouse and started building their own floats and doing it because we couldn't get them anymore, quite frankly. And so we took that on, and with our volunteers, we started to do that. And evolved out of that, as you talked earlier about supporting each other. So we became the supporter of the St. Patrick's Day Parade, the Columbus Day Parade, the Puerto Rican Day Parade, the Juneteenth Parade. All of those parades, you know, get to use our floats. We don't charge them. And you know, we support them. And that's another thing that goes on in the Bridgeport community that some people don't realize that either, that we help each other.
No, and I think that's one of the greatest parts of Bridgeport, that folks don't necessarily know how really integral we are to each other. You know, all of these arts culture, you know, whether it's the festival or the zoo or, you know, City Lights Gallery, it's like we're an ecosystem, you know, and when it's time to come together, everybody seems to step up all the time. You know, it's like, of course I can help you do that. You know, what do you need? You know, right?
Yeah.
What do you need? You know,
all I gotta have is somebody that wants to do it.
Well, that's a good point, because we can get into a little bit of the underbelly. I think prior to me coming to the Barnum Museum, like I said, it was back in 1998, the museum and the festival didn't do a lot together. This was like in the 1990s, you know, and I remember we were sitting down having a conversation. You know, I'm new to town. I didn't know the backstory. And it was like, why is that, Charlie? And you were like, well, you know, and it was like, okay, that stomps now. All boats rise with the tide, you know, and really, I think that was the turning point.
Well, we had to get to the point where there's some more is more. It's not just a competition. More is more. You help each other, and it's and it makes everybody better and stronger, and you deliver, you know, better products, so to speak, to the community.
Right. You know, and people say that it's like, oh, it's your competition. It's like competition. I said, my competition is this these days. It's not my cultural, you know, allies. You know, it's like getting people off their technology to come out to, you know, celebrate the Bridgeport, you know, Festival Day at the zoo. You know, I'm encouraging everybody here and now, watch for that. What we're going to do is have all of the links to the Barnum Festival in the description box below. So if folks that are watching want to just go right there, they can click on the Barnum Festival website. You'll have all the, whatever you have scheduled up. It'll give you some of the history of the Barnum Festival. If you want to donate to the Barnum Festival program, you'll have those, you know, on your website too, so you can help support, you know, the festival programs to just keep it going, you know, as we all kind of make the leap out of this COVID impact. You know, we're still battling our way through it as well. So we've been chatting for a while, so I'm thinking of any last minute thoughts. You know, what do you see for the future? Because we haven't talked in a long time too. You know, and like I said, we're trying to get through our stuff here at the museum, but what do you see for the future of the Barnum Festival?
I honestly don't know. As I said, you know, the city has changed so much and the demographics has changed, and how do we change to you know, involve more in the community? As I said earlier, it's, you know, it's almost like we have to reintroduce ourselves after 74 years and see what other people may want. We've had this discussion, and we said when we complete this festival later this summer, we will sit down as a group and with our board, and all the former ringmasters are all members of the board, and then we'll sit and talk and say, you know, where do we go from here? I mean, next year would be our 75th year. So it's I don't honestly know the answer, but I know that there's interest in keeping it going.
Yeah, well, you know, you don't necessarily know the answer, but there is an answer out there. And, you know, and realizing the changes that needs to happen, you know, to shift into the 21st century is a great thing. So sitting down and having those conversations, well, even for just to make the parallel, you know, when the museum got hit with the tornado, it became the opportunity to say, okay, who are we in, you know, in the future? And we, just like what you're going to do, we brought hundreds of people through workshops, focus groups. We did a couple of charrette. We had a listening session to really kind of find all of that out. And it was exhilarating. You know, it really kind of illuminated what the future, you know, the possibilities of a Barnum Museum for the future would be. And for us, I'll impart this to you, the question that everybody had, whether we were talking to a Georgia Strata, you know, or the Cultural Alliance, everybody's like, well, what would Barnum have done? What would Barnum do? And we wrote that in huge letters, a big piece of paper, and put it on the wall. And that was the question we had to answer. What would Barnum do?
It's actually a good question.
It's a good,
you know,
question.
But I do see this year under Ringmaster Frank Gennarini, we got some new volunteers, people that are chairing an event for us, and they're going to do the car show for us. And it's a husband and wife team that got together, do it, and brought one of their friends in. And the enthusiasm that they've had has reinvigorated me to say, well, there's still, you know, let's see. And these folks are going to be part of that discussion group. And, you know, where do they think we should go? You know, I quite frankly, sometimes I say, somebody smarter than I has to figure this out. And I said, because maybe I've been so close to it for so long, I don't see the forest for the trees. But as you say, there's other people out there with other ideas and whatnot. And, you know, as I tell anybody, I'm all ears.
That's it. Well, and that's why you've been doing the festival so long. You're always all ears, you know, it's like, what's next? You know, and we can dive into that. So with that, Charlie, I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk about the Barnum Festival. I mean, there are just decades, you know, and people and, you know, and events. There's been so much to talk about in that 74 years that we could go on forever and ever. But I want to thank everybody for watching. Please make a comment below. Happy to respond to you. And again, check out the Barnum Festival, you know, link to their website, so you can find out all the details about the Barnum Festival. And I just want to do hats off and a nod to all of my friends through the Barnum Festival over the last 20 something years. You know, it's always a joy to work with everybody and see these programs and mostly see all of the people that come to the events who have enjoyed it and who are excited about it coming back in whatever iteration it will take, you know, in the future. And you can count on the Barnum Museum to be, you know, at the heart and soul of whatever the decisions are there. So,
well, I really appreciate that. Thank you for having me today. The museum, of course, will always keep P.T. Barnum alive in the city of Bridgeport, and we want to be part of that. There's so much that we probably didn't talk about, but that'll give people that watch something to ask or to comment on about what they remember of the festival, and we look forward to seeing those.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Hello to all of the Carrolls that are watching. Everybody who's had anything to do with the Barnum Festival. Thank you all, you know, and like I said, please subscribe if you're not a subscriber already, and we look forward to seeing you again at the next program.